Happy Sunday, everybody. Y'all know what time it is. That's right. We are back with some more Centuria, picking up where we left off on Chapter 3. And a small disclaimer before we dive right back in. From here on out, the chapters will be getting significantly shorter. You might have noticed that in the first two videos I made, they were pretty long, spanning across 20 to 30 minutes in terms of video length. And I believe that the first two chapters specifically were around 40 pages each. But going forward, the average number of pages per chapter is going to be essentially cut in half, with around 17 to 20 pages per chapter going forward. For those of y'all out there who would prefer not to sit around for 20 to 30 minutes watching one guy cover one chapter at a time in Centuria, I do hope that this is easier for y'all to digest. And really quickly, I do want to ask y'all a question here, and that is simply, what anime or manga character do you relate to most? Oftentimes, as I read or watch certain manga, I'll find myself hearing a character's story and matching components of their lives to components of my own. And in my personal experience, that makes for a better digest of the story as a whole. I'll give you an example real quick. I relate strongly to Shin from Sakamoto days. Not in comparison to his telepathic abilities, because if I had those, I'd be goated, but rather to Shin as a character and the detail that he often feels he relies too heavily on others, such as Sakamoto or Nagamo or Mafuyu or Natsuki. Any characters that support Shin in the story, he feels he relies on them too much. And much like Shin, I've made it a point to kind of break out of that shell and to be able to develop enough to rely on myself to protect my values and needs. So let me know a character you relate to down in the comments below. Without any further yapping, let's dive right back into my current favorite ongoing manga. Read Centuria. And we're right back where we left off in the story on Chapter 2, with Julian slowly wading through the ocean waters towards the shore as he leaves his boat behind, still carrying a sleeping Diana in his arms wrapped in a protective cloth. And as he approaches the shore, we notice that during his fight with the Leviathan, Julian sustained an injury in his right eye from a poisonous tendril slashing him across the face. And likely as a result of this, his vision only being half as good now, he staggers as he makes his way onto land, and he begins a monologue listing off his priorities. First, I'll find help. We need food and a safe place to rest. At all costs, I must protect Diana. And the opening tagline to this chapter reads, "They've reached the shore at last, but their struggles continue." Now, real quick, I just want to offer some appreciation to my boy Julian, because despite being only 3 chapters in, we've already seen quite a lot of growth from our main boy, going from an almost apathetic young man who lacks understanding of love to a fierce, devoted warrior and a brother. And Diana could not have been more lucky to have been blessed with Julian at her defense. And I appreciate the level of development that Kuramori-san treats his characters with. Even someone like Mira, despite her untimely end in the first chapter, still continues to be a driving force and a determination for Julian, and the long-lasting impact of these characters is a cornerstone for building a good story. And so far, Centuria has been exactly that, a peak story. Now, Julian is bloody, battered, worn, and torn from the grueling death match against the Leviathan, and his body is struggling to agree and keep up with the commands given to it by his mind. And Julian thinks to himself, I feel faint. Perhaps I lost too much blood? My head is spinning, I'm beat, and I can hardly move. I'm starving, I'm exhausted, my brain is foggy, and I can't think straight anymore. Now, Julian's thoughts are disrupted as a figure approaches him on the shore, their footsteps rustling softly against the sand, and it's a girl about Julian's age carrying a spear in her right hand with a flopping fish pierced on the tip and a satchel in her left hand, and she closes the distance between herself and Julian with a warm, curious smile on her face. And Julian is way too shaken and exhausted from the battle to fully comprehend what's happening. Huh? The girl smiles and replies to him, a baby, so adorable. Julian still blinks in utter confusion, words failing him at the moment. What? Oh, From behind the young girl, a hulking figure clad in iron armor and a fur coat, carrying a blade on their waist, emerges from the trees. And Julian instinctively goes into high alert, shielding Diana in his arms as the knight-like figure looms above him. What the hell? Julian thinks to himself. This guy's huge. Is he a knight? A soldier? What does he want? And Julian wills himself to stand up on adrenaline and instinct alone, his protective nature flaring as he steps in front of the young girl, holding his arm out and saying, "Stand back." And the girl looks at him with mild confusion and a slight hint of amusement before running past him towards the knight, embracing them with a familiar cry of their name. Angvall is the knight's name, and she explains the situation to Angvall, saying, "That kid is hurt, badly." And Angvall steps forward with a concerned edge in their voice. Those injuries are grave and deep. Why are a young boy and a baby traveling all by themselves? Where are your parents, young ones?" Now, Julian's expression pains a little bit as he recalls Mira and the sacrifice she made so that Julian and Diana would have their second chance at life. She died in my place so that the two of us could live on. And Angvall remains silent, just absorbing in Julian's distress before responding with empathy. "Come with me. Babies need milk in order to live. We have goat's milk you'll be able to use. Plus, your wounds need tending to." And Julian is very, very visibly taken aback by Angvall's invitation, not expecting such hospitality from this massive, intimidating giant knight. And he pauses, glancing down at Diana, who coos a few unintelligible words before Angvall continues. "It wouldn't sit right with me if the two of you were to die in this state. Let me help you. Come along." We then cut to Angvall's cabin on the edge of the forest, right in between the tree line and the dock along the shore. And Angvall gives the order to the young girl, "Titi, hand me a needle, a thread, and bandages. Don't forget to bring new clothes, too." And the young girl named Titi responds urgently, "Gotcha!" as she runs to grab the requested items. Angvall observes Julian's damaged back, noting the stab wounds piercing through his shoulder and stomach, and thinks, what could have possibly happened for someone so young to be so broken and disheveled? And Angvall begins to thread the needle, stitching Julian's wounds together. "How strange," Angvall says. "From the blood, I thought this was a fresh wound, but it's already closed up." And we can gather from this that Julian's power is still working and still effective, the octopus creature's blessing, and it offers some sort of regenerative properties, as we saw in the first chapter after the captain's blade had pierced through Julian's throat. But the wound had closed up on its own, if you'll remember. And Julian thinks to himself in a monologue, "Come to think of it, my injuries heal quickly, and my body is far more resilient now. But that's not all. I was too absorbed in the duel, so I failed to notice that I was subconsciously breathing underwater. As I use my power more, I feel my body adapting in turn." After tending to and bandaging Julian's injuries, Angvall studies him, saying, "The clothes we picked out are a little too big for you, but they'll do finely. Come along, dinner's ready. Please eat up." And we get a good look at Julian here, and his head, neck, and arms, and presumably his entire torso, have been wrapped in this protective bandage cloth, including a strip of cloth acting as a patch to cover his injured right eye. And Julian stares down hungrily at the food, bread, meat, fruits, beverages, and his mouth begins to water. He's never been exposed to a spread like this before, and he feels indebted to Angvall, saying, "Excuse me, I have no money to repay you with." And Angvall replies graciously, "Don't worry about that. Eat. I'm not interested in your money you have or don't have to offer. I wasn't going to take it from you to begin with." Julian, still not used to being treated with such generosity, asks, "Why? Why do all this for me? A stranger you've never met?" And Angvall responds, "It's only natural to care for children and babies. I don't need a reason to help you." Julian is reminded of his first ever conversation with Mira aboard the slave vessel, where he asks, "You'll help someone for nothing in return? I don't understand. What's the point of doing that?" To which Mira had replied, "It lets us maintain our pride as human beings." And back in the present day, Julian graciously thanks Angvall and asks for a clean cloth to use, to which Titi obliges, handing it to him. And Julian dips the cloth in the goat's milk that they talked about before, cradling Diana and putting the cloth to her lips. "Drink up, Diana. Here's some nice goat's milk for you." Titi watches with a smile beside the stoic Angvall, who observes him as well. "You can use the bedroom on the second floor," Angvall says, after they have all finished eating. And Julian is moved by Angvall's kindness, vowing to him, "I swear I'll return this favor someday." They introduce themselves to one another. My name is Julian, and this is Diana. I'm Angvall, and that is, my name is Titi. It's nice to meet you. Julian drags himself upstairs, setting a babbling Diana down and collapsing onto the mattress beside her cradle. Ugh, damn. I overdid it. I've reached my limit. I'm about to pass out. I don't think my eyes could stay open for any longer, even if I tried. Finally, I can rest. Unfortunately for our boy Julian, he still doesn't fully comprehend how babies work, and his rest is short-lived as Diana keeps him awake with cries of distress, arms flailing wildly in her crib, and Julian groans in exasperation. Damn, I can't sleep. She won't stop crying. His attempts to comfort Diana do little to help. Shh, I know, it's okay. I understand you're cranky, but please, just let me sleep. I beg you. The realization sets in. It's no use. Maybe I should let her get some fresh air. And in a hilarious twist of fate, Titi is oblivious to all of this commotion, sleeping soundly as she sprawled out across her own mattress. I'll try to cover up as much of this panel as I can because I'm not entirely sure how much I'm allowed to show on here. But Julian steps outside, descending the cabin steps toward the dock, attempting to comfort a wailing Diana. There, little one. And Julian notices the armor of the hulking knight Angvall lying on the fur coat that was draped around their shoulders before. Confused, he turns to the water to find a large, muscular woman bathing in the moonlight. This is Angvall, and she notices him, wading into the shore and approaching him with a booming voice. What's wrong? Can't sleep? Julian answers, Yeah, Diana won't stop crying. Hey, I didn't realize you were a woman. And Angvall ruffles her hands through her hair, saying, Yup, I don't go anywhere without my armor on, as I have a sworn duty to serve this country as a soldier. Angvall quickly dresses herself, taking a seat beside Julian as he continues his efforts to soothe Diana's worries. She turns to Julian, sparking a conversation between them. Is something weighing on your conscience? Huh? What do you mean? I can sense it whenever you look at her. Julian pauses, gazing down at the small baby in his arms. Diana doesn't know that her mom died instead of me. It's my fault. She can't even get angry with me or scream at me. She's too small. She doesn't understand what's happening. Julian's regret is so palpable that you can feel it, gritting his teeth as he continues. Back then, I should have stopped her. It should have been me who died instead of Mira. If I had died, they could have lived happily as a mother and daughter. They would have been a proper family. And Angvall studies Julian contemplatively, absorbing his words before responding. There's no definitive way to be a family, no universal label for what that might look like. Titi and I aren't related by blood, but yet she's my family nonetheless. Family is ultimately what you make of it, not something predetermined or set in stone. It's fluid, like water. Angvall pauses as she gazes up thoughtfully at the starry night sky. Tell me, Julian, what kind of family do you want to give Diana? What sort of life are you envisioning for her? Julian looks down at Diana, his eyes softening as he notices her begin to settle down, as if being in Angvall's comforting presence and being so thoroughly cared for by Julian has gradually warmed her, easing her worries slowly but surely. And Julian thinks of Mira, smiling as he responds, I want to give Diana everything I never had, everything that I've lost. I want her to have it all, to live a full life. Food, a home, wealth, freedom, and above all, love. I want her to live without stress or worry. I want to show her a world free of suffering. She deserves it. Diana has completely relaxed at this point, falling asleep in Julian's arms. Angvall, while coming from a place of care and compassion, offers Julian a solemn warning. That's no easy task to undertake. You'll be forced to fight unconditionally, with all of your strength on her behalf. And Julian looks up, taking in Angvall's serious expression. Fight? Fight what? Angvall turns her gaze back out to the sea, her voice taking on a melancholic and almost longing tone. This unforgiving world, she says. Julian thinks back to those he's lost. Mira, the old man, the hard-headed slave, his friends, as Angvall continues. In this life, there's neither time to hesitate nor room for guilt. You'll need to give all to thrive, to live on and raise Diana properly. She adds with a smile, That's the way to give her a happy life, and perhaps the day will come when you'll look at your reflection and offer yourself forgiveness. Angvall kneels down, now eye level with a thoughtful Julian, enthralled by her sisterly advice. One surefire way to realize that dream is money. Start by earning a living. Julian perks up. Money? Really? And Angvall nods. Trust me when I tell you that money can absolutely buy you happiness. Julian replies, I'm not so sure. But Angvall, undeterred, continues. Let's look together for a job you can do next time. But for now, rest, and rest well. She pats Julian affectionately on the head. There's no need for you to take on the world by yourself, not while you're still full of grief. Rely on me. I'll take care of you until your wounds have healed. And once again, Julian is floored by Angvall's hospitality, smiling as he cradles the sleeping Diana. Thank you. I haven't met many kind-hearted people like you. Only around 100, really. And Angvall goes stiff, hilariously replying with, That's a hell of a lot of people. We flash forward to half a year later. Julian's wounds have healed, but his right eye noticeably has permanent damage to it, and there are scars all along his face and his body. TD calls out for him from the cabin with a soft wave. Julian, lunch is ready? Julian smiles. Okay, coming. He carries Diana in his arms, who reaches out for something among a darkened pathway in the forest. Unga! She cries. Julian questions curiously. What's up? Do you see something? Diana's outstretched hand reaches for the narrow pathway in the shadowy brush, seemingly calling out for something, and Julian wears a puzzled expression, curiously observing the spot, following Diana's gaze before shrugging and turning away. I don't see anything there. Come on, Diana. It's time to go eat. And as he walks away, Diana peers over his shoulder, letting out one more soft cry towards the area. With Julian's back turned, we get a first glimpse at a black goat-like entity with demonic eyes, irises the shape of horizontal lines, and a wicked smile too inhuman to belong to any normal animal. The closing tagline to the chapter reads, Something lurks within the shadowy depths. End chapter. I gotta say, this one was a real heartwarmer. We're continuing to watch Julian discover the true meaning of family in real time, with Mira acting as his first true motherly figure, Angvall playing sort of a big sister-like role, and Diana obviously being his adoptive younger sister. And while we haven't seen much interaction between Julian and TT yet, I do think it's important to note TT's relationship with Angvall, as rather than specifying exactly what TT is to Angvall, i.e. a niece, a daughter, a sibling, etc., Angvall simply says, right, she's my family, despite us not being blood related. And this ties back in with what she said earlier about family being subjective and up for interpretation. In this case, TT doesn't necessarily seem like she fits the role of Angvall's adoptive daughter or sibling, and it seems similar to a companionship bond that transcends that of friendship, kind of similar to Asta and Yuno from Black Clover, right? They were dropped off at the orphanage at the same time. Neither of them are related by blood, but they do have that brotherly rivalry, and it's a bond that pushes both young men towards their goal of becoming the Wizard King. Now, this chapter immediately made me gravitate towards Angvall as a character, where she may come off initially as intimidating, but readers will quickly discover that her heart is as big as her body, which she wears proudly on her sleeve, or her armor, or her fur coat, whichever you think she wears her heart on. The last thing I want to touch on is the goat creature at the end of this chapter. At first, I was under the impression that this devilish-looking behemoth might just be another creature similar to the octopus beast or the leviathan, but there's one major difference here that I wanted to talk about, and that is the symbolism of occultism portrayed by this goat beast. You may notice a striking resemblance to Baphomet, and if you aren't familiar with that name, Baphomet is a goat-like entity/deity renowned in the occult for symbolizing the balance of opposites, which is to say the duality of good and evil. What interests me is that only Diana could see this creature, though, as when Julian followed her gaze, he seemingly saw nothing, right? And Diana, as of this moment in the series, is arguably the most pure character thus far, being nothing more than an innocent baby who has no understanding or knowledge of the concept of good and evil. And if we were to assume that this goat creature acts as a scale, constantly balancing good and evil, then it makes sense that only Diana can see it, as she's the most pure and innocent cast member. Think about Julian, who has a fractured sense of morality, or Angvall, who has seen a ton of things in her day as a warrior. But that raises the question, who else can see it? Who balances out that scale on the evil side? Is the goat itself the evil, or is it merely a medium to convey that a pure evil exists to contradict the good purity of Diana's soul, not yet tainted by the world? Hopefully we'll get more answers to this as the story progresses, but I'm looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Be sure to let me know what you think about this series so far, what you like about it, what criticisms you may have, and as always, God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.